What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Welcome back to another bonus episode of 10-Year Town. This is part 2 of our Q&A episode. Part 1 aired last week if you want to check that out. If you have a question of your own to submit for a future episode, you can do so at 10yeartown.com. Hope you guys enjoy this. Thanks. Next question.
Ding! This one comes from Bryce. When it comes to recording, any advice on finding studios, musicians, or producers?
Yeah. So I was just kind of doing this exercise yesterday, actually. There are a bunch of ways to figure out who played on songs.
Mm-hmm.
There's like all credits. There's like muso.ai. But if I hear a song that I like, and maybe I like the drumming in it,
Sure.
I will go, try and do my research on who played the drums on it. And then, a lot of times maybe they're out of my price range, but sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
Same thing with producers, like just figure out who produced something. And especially if there's a bunch of songs by, different artists and you continuously like the production and it's all the same guy, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
You should try and find a way to work with them.
Yeah.
And
see musicians that producer works with a lot. Because if that producer's out of your price range, the musicians that they work with maybe are not necessarily.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times producers will have like a circle of like musicians that they hire.
Totally.
And, say you liked the production on a track, but it's like, oh, well, I really loved like the steel guitar on it. It's like, well, you can go directly to that steel guitar guy. And most people in town record from their home as well as go to like a studio to record.
Yeah.
So like, cause I know that was part of his question was like asking about like studios and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, definitely totally doable, but it is really expensive. And a lot of musicians in town give you the option to not have to go to a studio.
Yeah.
And do remote sessions.
Yeah. I think just finding, a lot of studio musicians have a rate, like a per song rate that's not, totally insane.
100%.
Couple $100 up to a few $100.
Yeah.
For a song, and maybe you really need a certain type of drums for a certain song, and that can be a great option. But yeah, just doing your research and kind of trying to find, who played on what, and then, finding a way to get in contact with them. And then I would also just say, like, see my advice from previous question about how to reach out to those people.
Yeah.
Just don't, it's not always, like you don't always have to just come right out with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
another question from Caitlin here. As a music fan / consumer, what is the best way to access music that supports us, that supports songwriters? Buying albums, streaming, etc.
Streaming's always great. Buying records, even better.
Merch
is great. That's for the artists.
Oh yeah, songwriters. Yeah.
If you really want to support a songwriter and you have the means to do so, like hire them for like a private party or something.
Oh, that's a great way. Yeah.
Hiring a songwriter for a private party or an event, to do a songwriter round or something is a lot of times the most direct way that a songwriter can like put money in their pocket. Because all the other stuff, buying records, streaming, there is some money that eventually gets to the songwriter, but like it takes a while.
Yeah.
But I love playing private parties. It's always, and like friends of mine will be like, hey, we're going to go play this round for this bank, and it pays pretty good.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So that's my advice.
It's great.
Yep.
Okay. Got another question from Brandon. Where do you find, dude, I don't think I've said a single question without stumbling over it while reading. Where do you find most songwriters go for leisure in town? Do they avoid Broadway?
Yes. Most songwriters do not go to Broadway. Very few that I know. Most locals probably don't go to Broadway regularly.
Yeah, it's also a hard place to hang out with your friends and talk.
Yeah. A lot of there's a bunch of different bars people go to. I was talking about this in my write actually yesterday. I also feel like there's like kind of different eras. Like for a while, everybody went to Tin Roof down on Demumbrian. And then Midtown was a big, hang spot, winners, losers, Red Door. I don't know if it's just that my friends have kind of.
I would say Red Door, winners, losers is still like
still popping.
Yeah. Especially Red Door.
Yeah.
Midtown in general, I feel like is like, if it's going to be like an in Nashville thing, but also there's just so many new bars opening around here that like, if you're at a ride at someone's house, like there's probably a bar that's cool that's close by that you're going to want to go hang at.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like Midtown is definitely like still a pretty big hub.
Yeah. And kind of as you go on, I guess, as you grow up, et cetera, like your friends just start to go to bars less, which is what we were talking about in the right.
Right.
Because for us, it was kind of COVID like came and we all quit going out as much. And then the world went back to normal at some point and we just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
It's not as common now to go out, after, right. But when you're just getting started, I think it is way more common. So yeah, Midtown, it's where a lot of people hang out.
Yeah. I've literally gotten work from being just at Red Door.
Yeah. I mean, that's the huge, I met so many people at Red Door going to shows, going to, if an artist is playing in town, and these are like smaller shows, not the ones happening at Bridgestone. I'm talking about the ones that are happening at Exit In or Basement East, like just going to those shows and hanging out, if you're in the scene, you'll probably run into people that and I met a ton of my friends just going to shows.
Yeah. Dude, that's actually what are some good like venues to be looking at for shows for people that are just moving here? Like,
yeah,
that's a cool question, honestly.
Yeah. I still feel like the main ones are the ones I just referenced: Basement East, Exit In, and then what's Justin Timberlake's bar called?
I'll just
anyway, there's a ton of venues though, and I think it's just looking at calendars and just following the artists that you like, and seeing if they're playing in town, and just go.
The 1230 Club.
The 1230 Club. That's what I'm thinking of. But yeah, just go to shows. Everyone should go to more shows.
100%.
This is my
1,000,000%.
This is my. I'm like, I almost went to Leftover Salmon last night at the Ryman.
Yeah,
but it was like already 7:45.
Yeah,
and the tickets were like $90 a piece.
Yeah,
so it just seemed too expensive for spur of the moment somehow.
Yeah, understandable. Dude, live shows are still like, everyone's so hyper focused on the social media content way of like meeting people, but like live shows still happen literally every single day. And like there's dozens of shows going on.
Yeah, and there's so many cool like bars like over in East, the Underdog.
Yeah,
and they do kind of like
East Nashville has
jams?
So many sick. Yeah, there's sick jams happen there. Some like I know like Flamingo.
Yeah.
The Cobra. I don't know. Does the Cobra still do?
I don't know.
But yeah, there's just a ton of sick jams that are happening. There's a ton of cool venues, and everyone that's at the show is probably there because they want to meet other people. So like, yeah,
they're a fan of music, especially like the smaller the venue, the better.
Yeah,
the more
enthusiastic the people are there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah,
go to shows.
Cody's asking, I'm a 32-year-old with kids and already have a stable career. I never stopped writing songs, and I currently write 1 to 2 songs a week minimum. Sick. What should be the most effective step for me to take?
Cody, great question. I'm going to be real with you. If you got a stable job, just keep doing that. I'm kidding, sort of. But I don't know if you live in Nashville or not. So I don't know. Let's just assume that you are in Nashville. Kind of my same advice that I would give to anybody starting out is just try and find some ways to get your songs showcased. Be that playing rounds, posting them online, stuff like that. Just you definitely want to make sure that people are able to listen to what you got, you know, because there's a ton of people that say, I'm a songwriter, or I'm an artist, and then you go to their page and there's nothing there showcasing that they're an artist, you know, or a songwriter or whatever. So yeah, just making sure that your social media and stuff like reflects what it is that you want to do. But it sounds like you're doing it. You're writing 1 to 2 songs a week. Just keep going.
Yeah.
And just try and stay inspired and keep walking down the road, and you will find your way.
Yeah. Okay. This next question is from Gatlin.
Okay.
For those who have been here a while, does it seem as though the music industry has changed even in the last few years? I've been here the past 2.5 years, and even in that short time, I've noticed some drastic changes, like less camaraderie between artists and more people out for themselves.
Okay, I got a couple thoughts on that. The first thing is that the music industry is always changing. Every business is just constantly changing. Nothing will ever stay the same. So obviously in the music space, the biggest change of the last few years has been like TikTok, social media going viral. That's been the huge thing. And that has fundamentally changed the way that artists are signed. In a lot of ways, it's changed the way that songwriters get signed, because, you know, you'll have some relatively unknown songwriter attached to a song that goes super viral, and then they're getting snatched up too. But I will say one of the ways that I would look at the answer to that question is to look at what hasn't changed and what is not going to change, and focus on solving that problem, right? Because it's easy to be, I don't want to say bitter. I'm not trying to imply that this person is bitter. It's easy to go, oh, well, everyone's out for themselves, or, you know, people are selfish or whatever. But all that stuff has always been that way.
Sure.
You know, like people are people. We all have human nature, but that we, you know, programming that we follow. But I think Nashville is a very community oriented place. I think generally people are very interested in helping each other out as much as possible. And I do think that the things that will never change are what drives the entire music industry, which is great songs.
Yeah.
So how can you put yourself in a position to be making great songs? Because a truly great song will always find a way, and it will always take care of itself. So I would focus less, if you can, on like the bigger picture questions of like, is this right, or is this wrong, or does this guy like me, or whatever, and try and just focus on making great songs. And that'll solve a lot of your problems.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would make sense that like it feels like artists are becoming more like less inclusive maybe, and more focused on themselves, but it's like you're probably just seeing a lot more content from that artist promoting themselves. Because like being an artist now, especially in the beginning, and just always throughout the rest of forever now, I guess, with social media, it's like you are always going to be like having to promote yourself. Like you are now working, like your business has always been yourself. If you're an artist, like you are the business and the product and the supply, like that is you. But like now it's like you're actually having to put out content visually selling yourself to people online. So like that comes off probably people are much more self-centered, or only thinking about themselves, or not wanting to collaborate with other people. I don't know. I feel like honestly it has allowed a lot of more collaboration maybe.
Yeah. And one thing that I've realized time and time again is people's persona online is oftentimes different than the way that they are in real life. There's a ton of
100%.
people whose content I watch or I watch their videos or something, and I find it personally off-putting, but then I meet them in person and they're the coolest people ever.
Yeah.
You know, you're really getting a very narrow view of someone.
Yeah.
And you know, especially as an artist, we're all just trying to get heard.
Yeah.
Somehow. So sometimes, you know, you may not even be you may end up being some weird version of yourself.
Yeah.
To try and, you know, find your audience or whatever. And
yeah.
It's just hard. And then the other thing I would say is it's just changed a lot in that the Nashville kind of establishment, like be that labels, in particular, they just don't have as much control as they used to have. So things are moving a lot faster because there's not as many gatekeepers. So that is sort of thrown off the balance of the ecosystem a little bit, where there's a lot of new players. There's a lot of new artists. There's a lot of new managers. There's a lot of new types of companies that just operate differently. And I think that Nashville is still sort of adjusting to that shift, and it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But it's always in flux.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, we got a question from Jacob. How does one become a studio musician or a touring musician? How do musicians cultivate relationships with songwriters? More about the musician side of songwriting. Jacob,
that is a fantastic question.
Excellent question.
I would refer you, if you have not listened already, there's a couple episodes on the podcast where we have talked directly to studio musicians. The most recent one was the one with Dave Cohen. Mm-hmm. And there's another one that's a little bit older with Derek Wells. And they both kind of detailed their journey of how they got started.
Yeah.
And how they kind of met people and kind of got integrated into the studio world and the touring musician world. But, you know, just my own 2 cents that I'm adding here. And I'm not a studio musician per se, but I am a touring musician, and I hire a lot of musicians for different stuff, both touring and in the studio. And, you know, you do tend to just find people because of the other stuff that they worked on. So that seems like a little bit of a chicken or the egg scenario. But the first thing you got to do is be great at your instrument, which you probably already know that. So if you feel proficient, then would just try and find a place to get started. For a lot of people, that's in the musician world, that's Broadway, right? What else?
I mean, honestly, I feel like there's two like sides of it, because a lot of the touring musicians aren't really necessarily Broadway musicians.
Well, here, let me ask you this. So you got your first road gig was playing guitar for Tucker Bethard, right?
Yeah.
How did you get that gig?
When I was 11 years old, I was in a music camp, and me and another guy were in a band called All Y'all in a Stall. And he was 13 and I was 11. And then 10 years later, he texted me and was like, "Hey man, want to do this road thing?" So I got very lucky in that scenario that I was already, but essentially what that came from is me. And this is how I've gotten most things. It's just from being in bands with people as much as possible. Like I was always in like a different band or going to different, in order to be on the road, you just have to know someone who's already on the road and need someone. Like that's the way I feel like that you can get hired, is you eventually know someone who needs someone to come out with them and they know you. So how do you do that? How do you meet other musicians? Be in other bands, play, go to shows and see if people want to jam afterwards, or see if people want to or if they need a guitar player or something like that. I've played acoustic guitar for people, with songwriters at rounds, and had people ask me for what. That was how Derek Wells got his first road gig.
Yeah.
Was just being around as many musicians as possible and jamming with people and making music with people as much as possible. It's literally how I've gotten any connection that I've ever gotten in the music industry. It's just by playing with people.
It's just networking.
Yeah. And networking is literally just making friends. in
Yeah.
your like maybe like in your field, you know?
Right.
It's not this scary, like, it's like, no, dude, it's like, you like playing guitar? I like playing guitar. You want to like play guitar together?
Yeah.
And then like we just did networking.
Yeah, we just did.
It's not like a scary, weird thing.
Yes, 100%. Great question.
Yeah. All right, I got a question from Parker. I want to move into A&R at a publishing company. As a songwriter, what are the things that you like about your A&R team, and what can I do to do those things more?
Okay. Great question, Parker.
It's a great question.
I have had a couple publishing deals. I've had a few different publishers, and I remember them all fondly. The ones that have worked the best for me are, I would say, the number one thing as a songwriter that you're looking for in a publisher is just that they are listening. Like, you cannot underestimate the power of just listening to songs. So if you're, wanting to get into A&R as a publisher, maybe just reach out to some songwriters that you like and just say, hey, I'm just trying to get the hang of being an A&R person. Can you send me songs? Like, I just want to listen, and you can give them feedback or whatever if they ask for it. But I think that the best thing that you could do to sort of work on your ear as an A&R person, because being an A&R person is just taste.
Mm-hmm.
It's just developing your taste. And when you've listened to 10,000 songs, you know what a good song is.
Mm-hmm.
It glows in the dark, and I feel like you and I have kind of experienced that just in the production stuff that we've done for other artists. It's like, you know which songs stand out. It's hard to explain why, but that's just taste, right? So that's the best thing that you could do, I think, is just listen and have taste. And if you want to be involved in the publishing community, there's a ton of groups that deal with that. I guess for a lot of them you do have to be a publisher, but I think that publishers are very willing to take the time. If there's a few, if you can find a respectful way to reach out and just say, I'm really interested in publishing, would you take 15 minutes to go to coffee with me, or let me stop by your office and just pick your brain a little bit? I think publishers would be pretty receptive to that. I don't want to speak for anybody, but
sure,
it's possible.
Yeah.
Is that a good answer?
Yeah, I think that's great. Just listen, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the whole thing. People just want to be heard.
Yeah.
I think people just want to feel like their songs, when they're turning them in to their publisher, are getting listened to, getting some level of feedback. And then, like, the levels above that are like, I think it could be great for this artist. And then trying to find a way to figure out how to get that song to an artist, be that the publisher's relationship, or sometimes it's your relationship as the writer, of just kind of having the guts to send it to an artist that you know.
Yeah.
And that's pretty scary. But yeah, the base of the pyramid is just listen.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
All right.
I think that's about it for right now.
Okay. Thank you guys for all these amazing questions. We'll try and do these more often. So you could submit your questions at tenuretowne.com. And that's it. That's the pod.
See you later.
See you later. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to help support the pod, you can leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. It helps us out a ton. Love you guys. See you next Tuesday.